In this video, we're going to be learning the basics of box modeling by creating a Rook. So over on this right-hand side of the screen, there's this button right here, which opens up your Create tab. It's already open by default, and we want standard primitives to be selected in this menu right here. So we're going to click Cylinder, and now we're going to draw a circle just like that by clicking and holding down on the mouse. Once you release the mouse, it's going to set the outline for the circle. When you go up and down with the mouse, you'll be able to set the height, transforming this circle into a cylinder. Once you click the mouse, that sets the height. Now for this first step, the numbers you choose for the radius and height doesn't really matter too much because we're going to be changing that in the very next step. So over here, this icon right here will take you to the Modify tab. If we click on that, this is our cylinder and these are the parameters that our cylinder was made with. I'm going to drop the radius down to 5. No, 10, sorry. And the height also to 10. Now height segments, I want to go ahead and drop that down to 1, but before I do that, let's explain what the height segments do. So starting down here, this is the base of the cylinder. As we go up the side of the cylinder, we see that there are 5 segments. This is just 5 polygons tall, and there's the top of our cylinder right there. So when this says 5 segments here, this is telling us how many rows of polygons are going to be created before we go from this between the beginning and the end of our cylinder creation. So let's go ahead and drop that down to 1, and now it's just one polygon from base to top. Right here, sides. This is the number of sides that create our cylinder. While it does look smooth right here, if we get the camera just right, you can see that there are sharp angles there. This smoothing effect is just an illusion caused by the smoothing tool. We'll show you that in a little bit. But it helps create the illusion of a nice rounded object. One of the problems is if we're doing box modeling, there's not really a perfect circle. It's just we create more and more sides to create more and more of an illusion of a circle. Now for this project, we're going to keep it fairly simple. We want to have a number of sides that's divisible by 4 evenly. So I'm going to hit the up button twice here, and that'll take our sides to 20. And from there, we're ready to go ahead and begin the actual process of changing the cylinder into a roll. For this next step, we're going to come over here to where it says Modifier List. We're going to click this right here, and we'll get this list of all the different things we can use to change our cylinder. A modifier is just basically a script that's been pre-made for us that when we add it to our object will cause various changes. Let me grab one that we're not going to be using real quick called twist. If I click on that and I increase the angle, you can see that it starts twisting our cylinder around based off of the angle that we've chosen. Now we can use this for some animation effects later as well, but for right now I just want to show you that these modifiers, they're just there to help you with creating the shape that you ultimately want for your object. I'm going to go ahead and delete that twist off of there. So this is our modifier stack right here. Our cylinder is the base script that was used in order to create our cylinder here. Twist is at the top of the stack. This list works sequentially from bottom to top. So whatever script is at the bottom is going to be applied first, and then the next modifier, and then the next one if there's another one. So with twist selected, if I hit the trash can right here, it'll remove the modifier from the stack as if it never existed. Now the modifier we're going to be spending the most of our time with for this particular chess piece is going to be the Edit Poly modifier. So clicking on the list, we scroll down and we find Edit Poly right here. Now if you'll notice right here, there's also Edit Mesh, Edit Normals, Edit Patch, Edit Poly and Edit Mesh are pretty much the same modifier, they just go about the math a little bit differently. Most of the time I spend my time in Edit Poly, but a lot of other people just spend their time in Edit Mesh. Again, there's not a whole lot of difference between the two tools, so use whichever one is comfortable to you. Once I click on the modifier, you can see it gets added to our stack right here. And this rollout panel right here displays all the different things that can be changed with our modifier. Now this is context sensitive, so it's going to show only what's currently selected, right? Now our selection tool right here, we have vertex. If I click on that, you see all these little dots appear. If I were to click on any one of these dots and then select our move tool, which is these 4 arrows pointing away from each other, I can move that vertex independently of the rest of the shape, causing stretching to happen based off of how I move it. Now you notice some points it kind of breaks the mesh. That's to be expected, like right here, we have overlapping polygons happening. And this little black effect going on here is a concept known as z-fighting, where the polygons are technically at the same level as each other. They're at the same position. And so the vendor is having trouble understanding which one should be in front. So it's trying to render both of them at the same time. Now we don't actually want to move that vertex, so I'm just going to hit Control Z and it pops right back into place. Next up here is edge selection, which is going to be any straight line between two vertices. You see I can move them like that. I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't use edge selection a whole lot. Then we have border selection, which is a little bit more tricky to use, and I don't think I have any borders that are selectable on this mesh. No, I don't. Generally speaking, a border, let me create one real quick. So if I have border selected, and I click right there, see right now there's a hole in the cylinder, and selecting border selected everything around that hole. So just like that. Now I don't want to actually have this border selected, nor do I want there to be a hole in the cylinder here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control Z, and you'll notice the border gets deselected here. That's because your selections are in your history. So if you accidentally select too much, sometimes you can just hit Control Z once and that'll undo the extra stuff you added. Or if you accidentally deselect something after you've spent a lot of time selecting a whole bunch of individual objects, it'll reselect it for you. So I need to hit Control Z a second time here, and that actually undoes where I put the hole in the cylinder here. Now to explain how I put the hole in the cylinder, right here is the polygon selection tool. If I select on that, you see this turns red. That red means that polygon is selected. I can select any one of the polygons individually, or I can do a box selection and select everything the box intersects with. So if I just drag across like this, you'll see the top is not selected, the bottom's not selected, but the entire way around has been selected. And if I just wanted to cut a hole into it right there, there's a few ways I can do that, but with the polygon selection tool, one quick and easy way is to just hit the delete button on the keyboard, and there's now a hole there. Again, I want to undo that because I don't actually want a hole in this rook. This next one here is element selection. We don't have any meshes that have an element at this point in time, so we're just going to show that one later. So with polygon selection, we want to select the top of our cylinder here, and we'll start forming it into a rook. Now to do that, I'm going to use a tool down here under the Edit Polygons menu called the Bevel tool. Now Bevel and Extrude are again one of those sets of tools that are pretty similar in the way they function. Most of the time when people are doing these tutorial videos, they'll tell you to use Extrude. Personally, Again, I don't find too much difference between them, and I just prefer the feel of the bevel tool better than the extrude tool. So right here, I'm going to click on this little settings box, and that's going to open up a dialog for us, which will let us type in our settings instead of just using our mouse to drag them. That said, we can still do a dragging of our bevel tool by coming over here to where these arrows are, and if we click and hold on the mouse, we can go up and down, and this number right here is going to change the height of our bevel, and this number right here is going to change the outline of the bevel. So what the bevel tool and what the extrude tool do is they create a new element. So you can do it by edge or you can do it by polygon. And what it'll do with polygon is it'll take the polygon, it'll remove it from connecting to the polygons that it was connecting to, and add a whole bunch of polygons, these right here, to connect the one you have selected to the ones that it was connected to before. Now there are multiple ways you can use the extrude tool. I'm going to hit the bevel tool. I'm going to hit the checkbox real quick. I want to show you the different bevel types. So selecting right there, I'm going to click the bevel tool again. And let's take the outline back like that. So we have by group normals, which is going to take the calculation of the entire selection of normals, the entire selection of polygons you have, and calculate what the average of their normals is, and then create the bevel based off of that. Up next, we have local normals, which is going to look at the surface of your polygon right here and figure out what is a 90-degree angle from where it was. Once it figures out that 90-degree angle, it's just going to take the polygons and move it out in that direction. Then we have by polygon. Let's change this value a little bit. So by polygon works a lot like local normals, with the exception of each and every individual polygon is beveled by itself. So if you need to create an effect like this right here, where you have all the different parts of it separated, doing it by polygon is a nice and quick, easy way to do that. So I'm going to hit Control Z a few times here because I didn't want any of that to happen. I'm going to get back to where our cylinder was like this. So now selecting the bevel tool, we're going to do a bunch of type-ins on this one just to keep stuff simple. So when it comes to quality rooks, this is going to be on the low end, but it'll still be recognizable as a rook. I'm going to type in the number 5 here to raise it up by 5, and type in the number -2.5 here to give it that inward direction for this row of polygons right here. Once I've done that, you'll notice we've got 3 buttons down here. The X right here will cancel out the thing we just did, and the checkbox here will commit it. Now you notice once you commit it, the bevel tool goes away, but you can just reopen it, and it preserves the numbers in there. It didn't actually perform the bevel yet though, it just preserved it in there because it likes to assume you're going to do the same thing over again. So on this number right here, I'm going to type 20, and let's go ahead and leave this number at -2.5. So then instead of hitting the checkbox, this time I'm going to hit the plus button, right? This right here. And you'll notice when I hover over top of this, above our buttons it says bevel OK. When I hover over top of this, it says apply and continue, and then cancel. Apply and continue is just the same as hitting the checkbox, but instead of closing out the bevel tool, it stays open and starts our next bevel for us. So this number right up here, I'm going to change to 5 again. And instead of -2.5, I'm going to put a +5 there. Whoops. So I accidentally clicked over here and you saw my selection disappeared. I can just reselect right there and it's back. Now by putting it as a +5, what that's going to do is flare out this to the same width as the base of the cylinder right here. Doesn't actually look too good there, so let's go ahead and put it at 2.5. And then we're going to hit the plus button again. We want to keep the height going up at 5. Let's change the outline to 0. Now if you just press the enter button on the keyboard, it'll change the appearance here, but not yet commit it yet, so that way you can see what's going on if you're doing the type-in method. But that's one of the advantages to using these arrows right here. When you click and drag, it's just a live update because every time the mouse moves, it assumes you're pressing enter at that point. So again, let's go ahead and change that to 0, and then we hit the plus button again. Now this next step is a little bit different because we're going to take our height to 0, and we're going to take our outline here and apply a different number to it. Now if we scroll in on the top here, we can see our circle right there that we have selected. And if we drag our outline down a bit, you see what it's doing is it's creating another row of polygons just right along the outside of the circle while maintaining the same height. This is going to help us create the parapets at the top of the castle, or the rook. So I think -2 is probably going to be a good number for us to use. Once we've got that, we're going to hit the checkbox. So now we've got pretty much the whole rook except for the parapets actually shaped. And this is where telling you to have a number of sides that are divisible by 4 comes in handy. The number of sides we chose was 20. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to click that polygon right there, and then hold down on the control button, and then we're going to click those 4 polygons there. We're going to skip 1, hold down control still, click the next 4, skip 1, click the next 4, skip 1, click the next 4. So now we've got 4 sets of polygons selected with a little gap in between each one. So now if we click the bevel tool, it's going to look funky at first, and that's simply again because it's doing a -2 there and nothing else. Let's go ahead and bring our height up to 2 and put our outline at 0. So now we've got the 4 parapets going around. And just because I want to see a little bit more of a taper on those parapets, I'm going to hit the plus button again. I'm going to take the height down to 0.5 and put this at -0.5. And that just gives us a little bit of a rounded shape at the top of the rook. That last bit's not needed, I just like the way it looks. So now we hit the checkbox, and shape-wise our rook is done. However, you're going to notice we've still got a nice smooth cylinder right here, but as we go up the rook, we see this kind of harsh these harsh polygons where you can tell how many polygons we used to create the rook just by quickly looking at it. Let's go ahead and fix that using something known as the smoothing groups. This is something I mentioned earlier in the video. So if we scroll all the way down to the bottom of the Edit Poly modifier, we've got our smoothing groups right here. These numbers right here don't actually represent any particular value beyond names for the groups, so don't worry too much about what these numbers say. What we're going to do is we're going to do a selection right across the bottom here, and you see that's part of the 4th smoothing group right there. You know that because it turned blue. I'm going to remove that from it just simply by clicking on it, and now they're not a part of any smoothing group and they look just like the rest of the rook. Not what we want, so we'll go ahead and reselect it, hold down Control, I'm going to select that bit right there and that bit right there. And now I accidentally selected this circle right here. And by accident, I meant on purpose, but I'm going to show you how to deselect it now. If you hold down on the Alt button and then you click on that circle, the circle is no longer selected. So when we look around through here, we still have these 4 polygons right along through there that are selected. So we're going to hold down Alt and deselect each one of them as well. So now those 4 polygons aren't selected, the circle's not selected, the tops of the parapets aren't selected, but the parapets themselves are. The cylinder there, and there selected in 3 bands are. So we're going to click on number 9, and that's going to add all the selected polygons to the 9th smoothing group. Which number we select doesn't really matter. The only number that actually matters in this panel right here is the number 45. What that's saying is any polygon that's connected to another polygon that is less than a 45-degree angle, it'll try to smooth it out based off of that. It'll act like they're supposed to be a solid smoothed area. So if I click off of that, you see we get some smoothing going on right here, but we get some weirdness going on up here. That is being caused by the fact that I forgot to deselect the inside polygons right here between each of the parapets. So I'm just holding down Control, clicking on each one, click, click. Now, just in case I forgot to mention it earlier in the video, you'll notice I keep coming up to this little box right here. This is known as the view cube. If you click and drag on it, it'll rotate your camera around in the currently selected viewport. You know which viewport is selected based off of this yellow box right here. If I click into that viewport, the yellow box moves to it, there, and there. Now, if you're beginning modeling, my recommendation is to not touch the view cube in these 3 viewports. You want to leave this one set to left, this one set to top, this one set to front. As you get more comfortable with the whole process, it doesn't matter quite so much whether or not you rotate them. But as you're learning, just leave them as is, and if you need to rotate, just rotate in the perspective view down here. So now with those polygons selected, I'm going to click on the 9 right there, and you'll see the shadows disappeared because those polygons are no longer part of that group, so it's no longer trying to smooth it out in that weird way that it was doing. So next up, I'm going to zoom in up here. I'm going to select that right there, and you'll see it's just selecting the top bits right here. Now if I click 9, it's going to try to round it off like that. I don't really like that look, so instead of 9, I'm going to go with 10. And it's got a hard line there, but I do like the way this looks better. And with this particular, with modeling and animation, one of the things you should keep in mind is that this is art. Accurate isn't always important. It's more what feels right. Now, if you're going into engineering or architecture, accurate is super, super important. But if we're just talking about visual representations that are going to be on your computer and no place else, don't worry about it so much. So then we still have these bands right here that are still kind of blocky. So if I select right along through here, and then click right along through here, we have both of those groups selected. And if I wanted to, I could click 10, and it'll smooth out and not be smooth based off of this or this. And even though it's in the same group as these polygons right up here at the top, because they're not connected, they're not part of the calculation. So if I deselect 10 and click 11 and then click off, you see there's no change. It's that connection between the two when they're touching each other that the grouping starts to matter. Now, if you're doing this for game art, generally speaking, you want to try to keep your smoothing groups to as few as possible. In fact, if you can get away with none of them, that would be for the best, but that's going to require the use of normal maps and other types of smoothing shaders. So now here's our Rook in its completed form. Now I do want to point out a couple of commands here for controlling the camera. If you notice, when I hold down my middle mouse button, the little hand appears, and that lets me pan the mouse in multiple directions. Additionally, if I hold down the Alt button and the middle mouse button, instead of panning, it starts rotating like I was holding onto the view cube. So two quick camera controls right there that are important. And the third camera control that's really important is the scroll wheel. If you move up, it zooms in. If you move down, it zooms out. Now all of these can be replicated by these commands right here. Here's the pan right there, so I can click that, move it side to side. Let's see, let's go with rotate. Now rotate brings that up. I can click and drag there. Although honestly, I'm not too sure why I would want to use that tool instead of the view cube beyond this gives me a little bit more control over the focal point for the rotation. And we got our magnifying glass right there, zoom in and out. Now if you do something stupid like move your mouse completely far off and you lose track of where your piece is, so this is our hierarchy panel right here. I'm sorry, our Scene Explorer panel. If you select the object you want to focus on and then hit the Z button on the keyboard, it pops the currently selected viewport straight to the object. Now I'm going to deselect that. And next thing I want to do is go ahead and rename this object here, because cylinder 001, while it's the only scene object in the scene, so it's kind of obvious what it is, we're going to be using this scene to create our other chess pieces, so I kind of want it to be a little bit more explicit. So with this selected, if you click on it again, it'll let you start typing in right there. Alternatively, after you press enter and you come over here, well, normally it changes that to say Rook. I'm going to type Rook there, press enter, it changes over here. And then the third way you can rename something is by right-clicking and then clicking rename, and you see it just brings you right over to here. Press enter, and you see it says Rook 1 there. But I just wanted to say Rook, so there's that.